The Fairy Queen is a poem of repetition with difference, where we keep returning to restage versions of scenes we've already seen once before, but they play out differently in the details. The changing details is where the movement of the poem and the growth of the characters is revealed. I want to turn to Canto 9, stanza 20, where yet again we see Britomart unarmed and revealed as a woman, restaging an incident that happened in the first canto in another sketchy castle with another group of men. We've had this happen before already in book 3, and we're back to doing it again. And here's a few stanzas about that. Stanza 20. And eke that stranger knight amongst the rest was for the like need for enforced to disarray, though when as veiled was her lofty crest, her golden locks that were in trammels gay upbounden did themselves adown display, and wrought unto her heels like sunny beams, that in a cloud their light long time did stay. Their vapor vaded show their golden gleams, and through the personed air shoot forth their azure streams. She also doffed her heavy habergeon, which the fair feature of her limbs did hide, and her well-plighted frock, which she did won to talk about her short when she did ride, she low let fall, that flowed from her lank side down to her foot with careless modesty. Then of them all she plainly was espied to be a woman white, unwist to be the fairest woman white that ever I did see. Yes. So is Florimel, so is false Florimel, so is Belphoebe, so is Amrit, so is Gloriana, who we don't meet, so are various other characters, fairest of them all. Go with it. Who's the fairest of them all in the Fairy Queen? Who's being described in this stanza? She is the fairest of them all. Okay, let me pause there for a second. We have in stanza 20, again this moment, the hair is dropped, and if Florimel and the false Florimel's hair is like gold, Britomart's hair is like the sun. We have repeatedly had her beauty described as like the sun, hidden behind various clouds. Merlin tells her in Canto 2 or Canto 3, hey, like, no, you can't hide Britomart. You no more than a sun can be concealed behind a veil of clouds. Your beauty will out. Here, she is like the sun that's burned off the clouds. In fact, Britomart might be getting more beautiful, also being clearer. Also notice she's getting out of her armor faster here. Back in Malacasta's castle, she somewhat rudely and strangely kept her armor on through dinner. Manners be damned. Here, well, it's dinner time, gotta take off the armor, so she does. She is actually becoming braver and less fearful. If fear is one of the things that hurts love in this poem and isn't the same as chastity, Britomart, the Knight of Chastity, is becoming bolder, and it's working for her. She takes it off. She has careless modesty. She doesn't work at the modesty. Doesn't need to put any care into it. She plainly was espied, the fairest of them all. Like her hair like sunny beams in a cloud, their light did a long time stay. Their vapor vaded, show their golden gleams. Wow. Okay, but when she takes her armor off, she looks more warlike. She, at this moment, being unarmed, being dressed like a woman in her white smock with her long hair, makes the men looking at her see her as like the goddess Minerva, or the aspect of the goddess Minerva, Bellana, who is particularly warlike, is a war goddess. Like as Bellana being late returned from slaughter of the giants conquered, were proud Encelade, whose wide nostrils burned with breathed flames like to a furnace red, transfixed with her spear, down tumbled dead from top of Hemus, by him heaped high, hath loosed her helmet from her lofty head, and her Gorgonian shield gins to untie from her left arm to rest in glorious victory. An epic simile, long description of Minerva destroying this particular giant, transfixing with a spear, and then unlacing her helmet. Okay, Britomart is looking more and more like Minerva. It's not just the armor. She looks warlike herself at this point. It's not a disguise. Undisguised, she looks even more like a warrior goddess. stanza 23 and stanza 24. Which when as they beheld, they smitten were with great amazement of so wondrous sight, and each on other, and they all on her stood gazing, as if sudden great affright had them surprised. At last advising right her goodly personage and glorious hue, which they so much mistook, they took delight in their first error, and yet still anew with wonder of her beauty fed their hungry view. Yet note their hungry view be satisfied, but seeing still the more desire to see, and ever firmly fixed did abide in contemplation of divinity. But most they marveled at her chivalry and noble prowess, which they had approved, that much they feigned to know who she might be, yet none of them all thereof moved, yet every one her liked, and every one her loved. All these men have other love objects. I mean, Paradil is going to be putting the moves on Helena, the lady of the house, just a few stanzas from now. Saturain is roaming the world looking for his beloved Florimel, who doesn't even love him back. Malbecco is obsessed with keeping his wife Helena away from men, but they all love Britomart. This is, if the description of the witch's terrible son falling in love, seeing Florimel and being smitten, is a kind of repetition with variance on earlier incidents like that. Now we're doing it again. These guys do what he did. They are amazed, they're struck, and they contemplate her divinity. Britomart is another image of transparent, divine beauty, where her physical beauty transmits virtue and Platonic ideas like the beauty, the goodness, her divinity. She is a godlike being or a divine being. There's something blessed about her that you get from looking at the divinity. It's not much use for Malbecco. Okay, we're in the castle of Malbecco. Malbecco is an allegorical figure of jealousy, a lot of stereotypes in medieval tradition. He's old, he's feudal, he's not a warrior. The medieval courtly love tradition hates jealousy most of all. Jealous husbands are the worst, as any kind of ideology of adultery would make them the worst. What's the worst thing? The jealous husbands, they get in the way. Who are always imagined as old, unknightly, etc., often rich. The young aristocrat resents the older commoner, but with a lot of money, who's not warlike, but in business, who has the sexy young wife. If this seems familiar from The Miller's Tale, because it's the same thing. And the joke is always that the jealous older husband is just never going to keep the wife. That it's futile, it's self-defeating. He should just go with it. Back on stanza 5, or back on stanza 4, we're describing Malbecco. But all his mind is set on mucky pelf, to hoard up heaps of evil-gotten mass, for which he others wrongs and wrecks himself. Yet he is linked to a lovely lass, whose beauty doth her bounty far surpass. The which to him both far unequal years and both far unlike conditions has, for she does joy to play amongst her peers, and to be free from hard restraint and jealous fears. But he is old and withered like hay, unfit for, I needed to pronounce an ed there to make the meter work. Why is it withered and not withered? Because otherwise we're a syllable short. Just as you pronounce the silent E's, to us the silent E's in Chaucer to make the meter go, sometimes in Spenser and occasionally in Shakespeare and even Milton, you have to do an ed, wither ed. But he is old and withered like hay, unfit fair lady's service to supply. The privy guilt whereof makes him always suspect her truth, and keep continual spy upon her with his other blinked eye. Ne suffereth he resort of living wight approach to her to keep her company, but in close bower he muse her from all men's sight, deprived of kindly joy and natural delight. Malbecco he, and Helena she hight. Okay, he has refused to let the knights in until they threaten to burn the joint down, and then out of fear he lets them in. He is a type of jealousy. He is blind in one eye. This is also allegorical. We're going to see this pamphlet. She is named Helenor. I'll come back to that. Stanza 27. They set to meet, and Saturain his chance was her before, and Paradil beside, but he himself sat looking still askance against Britomart, and ever closely eyed Sir Saturain, that glances might not glide. But his blind eye that sighted Paradil, all his demeanour from his sight did hide. On her fair face so he did feed his fill, and sent close messages of love to her at will. Malbecco has won his good eye on Saturain, whom he views as the threat, who's the more macho. And more frightening. And he's watching Saturain, but his blind eye isn't going towards Paradil at all. And Paradil is having a great time courting Helenor. Two more stanzas of this. And ever and anon, when none was ware, with speaking looks that close embassage bore, he roved at her and told his secret care, for all that art he learned had of yore, nor was she ignorant of that lewd lore. But in his eye his meaning wisely read, and with the like him answered evermore. She sent at him one fiery dart, whose head empoisoned was with privy lust and jealous dread. Back to the arrow of love, but here's an arrow of lust and jealous dread and fear. He from that deadly throw made no defense, but to the wound his weak heart opened wide. The wicked engine through false influence passed through his eyes, and secretly did glide into his heart, which it did sorely grind. But nothing new to him was that same pain, no pain at all. For he had so oft tried the power thereof, and loved so oft in vain. The thing, of course, he counted love to entertain. Paradel is the hoe. Paradel is feeling love versus pain. It's a description. It's the pain of love. It's happened just like the good guy, the legitimate lovers, except it's like, it's all right. This is the pain. This is how it goes. It's part of the process. Okay. Paradel, a lot of this canto is about Paradel and Britomart recanting their mythological ancestors. Uh-oh, cat time. How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I know. Let's not photobomb it with your butt. Come on. Okay. So Paradel and Britomart go through their mythological ancestry. Britomart, again, this is the phony history of Britain from Book 3. She is descended from Brut, the Trojan prince who founded Britain, allegedly, not really, and thus from Aeneas, noble prince, hero of the Aeneid, also features in the Iliad, who escapes from Troy. We will hear from Aeneas indirectly again in Hamlet, where the player gives a speech from a play about Aeneas. Paradel is also descended from a Trojan. He's descended from Paris, who started the Trojan War by stealing another man's wife. His name is Paradel because he's a descendant of the mythic Paris. Helenor is named after Helen of Troy, most beautiful woman in the ancient world, whom Paris stole, and every Greek warrior in the world came for 10 years to besiege Troy because of it, and lots of people died. So they are two, Paradel and Helenor. The fact that they have those names tells you what's going to happen. There's going to be some adulterous romance. It's in the names. This is another kind of repetition with difference. They're a familiar type that we've seen before. We know what's going to happen, but we also know that this is not going to end well, except it's repetition with difference. Paris and Helen are great epic tragic heroes. These guys who we'll see more of in the next canto, are a repetition. They are doing this as farce. They're the low-end version of this. They're just adulterers. They're not great epic heroes who are going to bring an entire city to its downfall. They're just a couple of sluts.